Alright, so this is going to be another movie review. This one's called The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, 1960. This is going to be another Hammer horror deal directed by the great Terence Fisher. I did a collaboration with the AIP on another noir flick that I liked very much. Can't remember the name of it, but kind of bummed I lost my earbuds. Oh well. So this was disappointing. I disliked this movie. I'm giving it 2 out of 5 stars. I thought it was rather dull and not a very interesting take on the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde story. I'm not a big fan of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but there are better movies. Just want to look up something. Yeah. Yeah, so sorry, I should have looked at this up before I started the video, but a couple other uh, yeah, the reason why I don't like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is because it kind of denies self responsibility and kind of goes into drug addiction a little bit, kind of parallel to drug addiction, I guess. Not my cup of tea, but there is another Oliver Reed movie called Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype. It's a lot better than this. Oliver Reed, oddly enough, is in this movie too. And then Cyrus Longworth from Parallel Time and Dark Shadows, 1970. He was much better. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of character. But Hammer was doing these gothic horror movies, you know, recreating these monsters from the 30s and 40s, much the same way that Dark Shadows did, albeit much better in this case. Later on in the 70s, but anyways, if you want to see good Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde movie, check out Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype with Oliver Reed. It doesn't get any better than that. Seriously, one of my favorite movies with Oliver Reed. This one also has Christopher Lee. So, yeah, wasted effort on both counts. Mr. Hyde looks like a handsome womanizer guy. You would expect him to be like a burly kind of hairy guy. That's the Mr. Hyde that I'm used to, and I think that's how it's portrayed in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I don't know. That's another good movie that I haven't seen in a long time. But anyways, getting back to the story. So Dr. Jekyll runs this like daycare center for mute kids. Not sure what that's all about. And I'm not sure why he turns into a handsome guy when he injects himself with this fluid. So he's like hanging out with this buddy, some doctor dude. He's like, he starts injecting the monkey. The monkey goes crazy, and then he's got a loveless marriage, so he wants to escape from it. Uh, so he injects himself with the fluid and becomes Mr. Hyde. He starts going to the most depraved places in London that you can imagine. There's a lot of off-screen nudity and partial nudity in this one, like nude woman with her back turned, stuff like that. So, so Dr. Jekyll is really struggling with this split personality. Eventually, he he locks up the drug as if that's going to stop him from switching, but it doesn't because he switches on his own free will. The ending is kind of cool though. I like the ending. The rest of the movie was really a bummer. Um, and unfortunately, I've got Curse of the Mummy's Tomb as the double feature on this disc. This double feature B movie Hammer horror disc. Um, so that one didn't get good reviews either. But I'm giving even worse reviews to The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. I just couldn't get into this movie. There's no plot, really. It's just some guy who's battling his demons, so to speak, in more ways than one. And not really much going on in the way of plot or action. Just a lot of. I think they end up in an opium den, encouraged by Christopher Lee, of course, who plays the the womanizer who takes Dr. Jekyll's wife and you know basically becomes her lover throughout most of the movie. Um, I didn't like the Christopher Lee character, by the way. It's unfortunate. I like Christopher Lee as an actor. I thought he was good in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and also the Satanic Rites of Dracula, which most people don't like, but I thought it was a great flick. Um, so it's kind of disappointing to see him and Oliver Reed in this wasted effort. And even the director, Terence Fisher, made a much better noir compared to this movie. Um, don't ask me the name because I don't remember. Anyways, I think this is another U.S. British collaboration. I could be wrong. Maybe Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is I don't know. Anyways, I'm pretty bushed. I'm going to bed, but not a good flick. I'm not going to recommend it. I'm not going to say check it out. I'm not going to post the trailer in the description box. So that's the end of my review, I guess. What else can I say about this movie? Um, it's kind of surprising to see London in such a depraved way. Um, but still wasn't really eye candy for me because it was mostly white women anyway. So not my cup of tea, but no pun intended. I just couldn't get into this movie. I didn't like the characters, any of them. I couldn't see that there was a protagonist other than uh, Dr. Jekyll's friend, but he wasn't really in the movie that much. Um, so there's kind of plot holes there. Uh, Really didn't make sense to have Mr. Hyde as this pretty boy character. That kind of threw me off. And I'm not a big fan of the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde theme. I haven't seen the 1930 movie, by the way. Um, but I imagine it's pretty similar. The guy drinks the liquid from the jar and turns into a monster. Um, I really can't understand the whole Mr. Hyde's rationale for equating freedom with just doing whatever you want and denying morality. Um, it was kind of interesting how he framed his other personality, and they kept switching back and forth, but still not a very good movie in my opinion, even with the kind of overacting on the part of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when he switches back and forth. That was kind of bizarre. He's like talking to himself. But if you want to see a weird flick, check out Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype. That movie is just crazy. I don't know how else to describe it. I was watching it, and my ex-wife walked in while I was watching it, and she goes, "Ew." So that's usually a good sign that it was a good movie. All right. Anyways, um, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. Got Eric the Conqueror. Um, Netflix was supposed to send me Assignment Outer Space, but guess that one got lost in the mail. So I won't be reviewing that one for a while, probably till next week. Anyways, that's the end of my review. Laters.